Executive Director at FMC. And then we're going to hear from Darlene Wolnick. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and I'm very sorry about the delay. Go for it, Jen.
All right. Thanks, Liz. So this webinar is one piece of FMC's broader effort to facilitate the professionalization of farmers markets. And there we go. We're not discounting the personal relationships that are integral to a market's success, but rather providing the tools to formalize some of the market's relationships and make use of the same management tools that many businesses employ to help markets increase their customer base, smooth governance difficulties, maintain beneficial partnerships, and build in some institutional memory that will allow a market to thrive even when faced with management and regulatory changes. The first step towards professionalization is defining the role and goals of your market. And Darlene Wolnick is here with us today. Excuse me. Darlene is FMC's Market Programs Advisor, and she has been helping markets through this process for many years. Darlene works as an independent researcher and analyst for market organizations throughout North America. She's a lifelong retail anthropologist. Darlene began focusing her attention on farmers markets and food systems upon returning home to New Orleans in 2001. In New Orleans, she worked for 10 years at Market Umbrella, creating and running their direct marketing outlets for farmers and designing their groundbreaking market share project, which helps build resources for public markets everywhere. She served as the 2012 board president of the Community Food Security Coalition, and you can find more recommendations and advice from Darlene on her blog, helpingpublicmarketsgrow.wordpress.com, which highlights trends and opinions in public market management and food system theory. As you have noticed already, I'm sure, during Darlene's presentation, we're going to be presenting you with some poll questions. Some are for markets that already have a mission statement, and some are for markets without a mission statement, but just feel free to answer the questions that are applicable to you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Darlene. And again, sorry for the delay.
Great. Thanks, Jen.
So I'm going to start up the next round of poll questions. Is that okay, Darlene?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Okay.
Am I in control now or no? Oh, here I go. Oh, not yet. All right. Okay. Okay. So thank you again for joining us. As Jen said, you know, the idea behind doing these sort of practical market webinars is as much as we can get into the really intricate and innovative programs that markets do, we still remember the very basics of what is good market management and how do we make sure that markets serve their communities. And so what I've noticed, as I've said, what I've noticed before in the years in my work in markets is when this particular conversation comes up around mission statements, it often comes to me from markets in one of a few different places in their history. First of all, when markets are new and they're intentionally building their structure, they will sit down and create a mission statement and reach out to their community members to make sure they're included, which is a great way to do it. If you're organized that way, good for you. Second group of markets I often talk to are those who had an original mission statement that was very focused around maybe their Saturday morning farmers market. And since then, since they're so successful, they're being asked to do lots of other projects, and they're thinking of lots of other ways they can build their community food systems. And so now they're thinking about expanding their mission, maybe the market's mission, maybe only the organization's mission, and they start to revisit their mission at this point. Third place I see people working on mission statements in markets is markets that have existed for some time, but the group of people who built the market were a small group, maybe a small trusted group of colleagues who didn't write a lot down and just got the thing going and worked pretty smoothly together for a period of time, but maybe now want to hand it over to another group and realize they need to write out some of their intentions and create a mission and a vision so that the ongoing generations will know what the purpose of this was. And the fourth group, unfortunately, and I hope you don't belong to this group, are those markets that are in some sort of a crisis because market community members are pulling them in different directions, and because the mission is vague or there isn't one written or any sort of definition, it's a little easier for them to do. And this is actually a time when, you know, it's almost too late to do it, but you have to do it, so you might as well get in there and do it. And so what I know is that for many, many markets, this is not a theoretical conversation, but a very practical one. How do we make sure people know what we're all about? So I'm going to talk a little bit about theory, but I'll move hopefully more to the practical right away, and then we're going to leave lots of time for questions as well. So the idea around the theory of markets, you know, as you all know, if you run markets, is people will say to you all the time, of course, why do you, you know, what do you mean you work in a market? What do you mean farmers markets are new? I think there's less and less of that confusion nowadays. They see all the different projects and work that farmers markets are doing, but I still think it's important when you're thinking about your mission statement to remember what the larger theory here is. Why are you running a farmers market? Why was this particular mechanism the right thing for what you're up to? And so what you see on the slide in front of you are some of those examples of how people use markets as a theory of change, some of the things that markets can do. And as most of us know, we're working more and more with people like public health organizations, and they come with the whole theory of change, and that has it's worked out well because markets have very much the same one, which is about this, you know, changing behavior. And so the theory of change behind markets, the larger theory, I think is important for you to remember as you're thinking about why you need to write something down as far as a mission statement. And then also the other piece is really what market your partners think. This particular quote you see on my slide here is a public health agency person who I work with who, when she went to go work with markets, and this is not unusual, they had a particular point of view about markets. They would act a certain way, that they knew that they represented these groups. And what she has found, as many other partners have found, is that without some defined mission and without some structure, it's very hard to work within that market for change. Should you be working with grocery stores? Should you be working with school food? What does the market's governance think of that? So having a mission statement, when your partners are looking for the appropriate markets to work with, a lot of times they're going to be looking for your mission statement to see how that fits into what they're talking about. So when you're talking about doing mission statement work, I think that obviously I was always going to start at the beginning. And these are the sort of type of questions you want to use. I think the need, there's, you know, as people know, there's needs-based organizing and asset-based organizing for the most part. And most markets are working through a needs-based, which is there's a problem, a lack of something in our communities, and we're addressing that with this, this particular mechanism. We also start to think about the assets of our organization the longer we've been in existence, which is great. But at the beginning, you ask, what is the need that you're going to serve? Is it the fact that farmland is moving, you're losing farmland rapidly? And then how and who will you serve? And that is not that you have to list everybody that's going to be served in that mission statement, but you want to think about what connects all those different groups, what connects the farmers and your shoppers and the larger community. You know, what about public space? What about public health? Those other, you know, you want to think about who might be the agents that would work in that. And that, the language that they would share would go in there, and then your values. And I think when we're talking about there, the best example of that might be something around local economy. A lot of people have put that in there. They're being very clear that they're talking about a regional or a local economy. So that's a value that might say, well, we want to support those that are locally that are close to us. So in essence, the mission is your essential work. It's not everything you do. It's not, here's a list of all the different things we do. This is the essential need we serve, who we serve, and how we do it. And if you've existed and you want to redefine it, I think this is the type of question you want to be asking yourself. And I know I've been in a number of organizations that have gone back and redefined their mission. And it's a great moment to really celebrate all the good things you've done, but really to ask yourself, how successful was that? Where do we keep it? How much did we use it? And I think the way to do that often is just to say to yourself, go out to the market and ask people, what the mission statement is. I've done that often, and you'd be surprised at how many people don't know it, don't know where it is, don't refer to it. So how often it's used and how it's used, I think, is extremely important that you keep that in mind when you're redefining it. And then, so if you're in existence, yes, you should be thinking about your market location. Have you just built in a market location? Are you a permanent structure now? Is there something about that location that you are now committed to? Do you want to put that in your mission? Do you want to talk about what the regional food system is now in its history? I think all of those pieces go into revisiting existing mission statement. And if you are in that existing existing market, when should you go look at that? Well, this is, when I say new staff, I include volunteers in that. Often what will happen is I will go to a market and they're adding projects and they're adding program, and I'll go out to the market itself and ask volunteers or staff or vendors to explain, or what about this new project they're doing, what do you think of it? And there's some vagueness often in that part of the community. Maybe it's something that doesn't specifically address the work that you're doing within the market, but it's very important that if your market mission is about, it says market in it, and you're doing other work besides the market, and there are staff or volunteers that can't really describe it in relationship to that mission, then it's time to revisit. You can't stop mission drift. I mean, many times it's part of the evolution. If you are a market that is expanding its reach and you're trying out some pilots, well, each of those pilots may not be squarely in the middle of your mission statement as it's written. But soon after you've decided to keep those pilots and make them into programs, you should make sure that the mission statement addresses them. The funder piece is very important. I mean, when you get a funder or a new stakeholder who says, can you describe that a little better? Explain to me why we're doing that. Explain to me how you're going to do that. You can use that often as a way to realize that maybe your mission statement isn't as clear. They are looking very much at that mission statement and your purpose before they engage with you. So if their funders are asking you a lot of questions, then you may want to think and ask them, do you think that is this not clear within our mission? I think the same as when you have active opposition in the market. Again, that's a very dangerous time to be in when there are people that are outwardly expressing disappointment or anger with new programs. But I think, again, if you go back into your mission and go back to what you're doing and ask them to help you figure that out, it may be that you end up with the market mission statement and an organizational mission statement, and they're relatively separate, although obviously they should relate to each other. So some of the do's and don'ts of mission statement, the open process. I'm not saying that you should invite every single person in the community to sit down and shout out, ideas for you or have them write it with you. You will be in that process for just so many years. I don't think you'll ever get out of it. I would instead say there are ways of doing that to make sure that everybody is represented in the conversation. I'll give you an example. I'm working with some students in Hammond, Louisiana, and they have a market that is about helping to educate the community in the university about the idea of local food, maybe moving the cafeteria to doing more local food procurement. And so they wanted to do a mission, and so I suggested that they simply cut out maybe 10 or 15 of the words that they thought were most important to their mission statement, cut them out, put them in a pile at the market table, and let people pick out one or two of the ones that they thought were the most relevant to their market. And it made it much more of an inclusive process, and it gave them a good idea of what people were searching for when it came to that farmers market. Things like that, certainly dot surveys, and within some control experiment, I think would be useful here too. The interior words, I'm starting to see this a little bit more than we used to see that, and I mean interior words like things that are important but interior, like food deserts. I see that in mission statements sometimes, and I think although it's an extremely important piece that we make sure people are aware of, in a mission statement, that can be a little off-putting for somebody who comes from their community, who's not dealt with food issues before, who just thinks that wants to think of this as part for them. Maybe it's a vendor who doesn't understand what a food desert is and looks at them and says, I don't even know what that is. Think about the words you're using. Think about the words that are culturally useful in your community as well. There might be words that are more likely to be used in your community than others. Think of those words for those mission statements as well. And of course, always keep these short. You can see mission statements that are a paragraph or longer, and that becomes more than a mission statement. Again, the essential work is what you're trying to define here. So again, this probably should be the elevator pitch, although not always is that true. But if you're in an elevator and that funder you've been searching, trying to get a meeting with, gets in the elevator with you, and they ask you a question about, and you introduce yourself, and you're able to give them the name of your organization and the mission statement and what you're talking about on the way down to the bottom, you're doing pretty good, because that means you're going to use that mission statement often. You're going to remember it if it's short enough, if it's actually a thing that maybe your vendors would remember and your staff will remember. It's great to have a very lofty one as well, but it also can mean that it won't be used as much. And then review it. Review it often. It doesn't have to be every 5 years, but do review it often, because there's almost no chance that your mission hasn't changed a bit in a number of years. It's most likely that it has changed and needs to be revisited. So very important. How to use it. When you get it, you write this thing out, you have it, how you use it. I think many of you have heard me talk about 4Ms, which is one of the tools that we created at Market Umbrella in New Orleans, and is continued to be used in some of their newer tools at Market Umbrella. And often when we would work with the market, we would ask this, all right, tell us your mission. And again, if you're for-profit, nonprofit, or not organized at all, you should have that purpose. You should have a sense of what you're doing, what your reason is for existing, your mission. So everybody should have that statement, no matter what kind of organization you're incorporated or non-incorporated as. Once you have a mission, and again, somebody comes to you and says, gee, I'd love to have you working on community gardens. Is that covered in your mission? Does it make sense for you to do it? Well, then once you've decided what you're going to do, how and who is going to do it is the management piece. And then, of course, marketing. How are you going to communicate that idea, and then how are you going to measure its success? If you have not seen this, on the back of the original shares on the Market Umbrella site in their market share, we have these little worksheets that we created, and for every one of the shared document, it has a little worksheet at the end. I find these very useful when I'm working on a project to remember the very basics of what reason I'm coming at this project, because it's supposed to be helping my mission. That's what. So look for this little four questions. We'll be giving you this slide presentation later, so you can keep it. And then, using it farther than that. So let's say this is your mission statement, and I've seen ones that are pretty close to this around the country. If I were going into a market that had this mission statement, and I were a vendor, let's say, that saw this, and that I saw that it was expanding access to healthy foods for all, and I didn't do food, I might not apply. I might also, not be sure, because if I were having sheep and spinning yarn and selling yarn, does that mean I couldn't be in the market? Because that's farmland. So that's what I mean about making sure that you know what the mission means. I think that if I were looking at this and I were a market manager, and I wanted to, somebody offered to bring in prepared foods, I would make sure that, of course, they were healthy prepared foods, because that was in my mission. But I've also seen examples of a market mission statement like this, where a farmer's market manager goes to their vendors and says, we're going to bring in this new vendor who does this product that we don't have at the market and people have been asking for. And the vendors are like, but wait, they come up, they are actually outside the Tri-County area. How can that be allowed? And whether or not that mission should change, whether you should stay clear to it, do you realize that other people might be quite aware that in your mission statement, it very clearly says, look, we get vendors from this Tri-County area. So somebody being in opposition to that would be quite fair. And then, of course, if you're expanding the projects for this market, there's a lot of ways, obviously, within this mission statement to expanding access to healthy foods. It doesn't even talk about a market, obviously. So if somebody were doing other types of food system organizing around this mission statement, I would not find that off. It's very clearly about expanding access for healthy foods. And then measuring it would be, I mean, I might take this, if I were a funder and looking at this mission, if I was offering them funding for capacity, I probably would first look at the very first part of that, active farmland, and find out how that is true. How is this market preserving active farmland? Is there as much farmland under cultivation? Are there more land owners? Is there more land ownership, more land trusts? How is it that you've preserved active farmland? How have you expanded access? Have you defined healthy foods? How have you expanded it to increase to all people? There's a lot of great ways within this mission statement to figure out how to measure its success. And once you have that mission statement and you know what you're going to do with it, you've got to figure out who's going to manage that. And that, if you're a nonprofit, a 501c, you're talking about a board of directors. For many markets, you will find that they have some sort of advisory group. I do believe it's very important, no matter what type of market you are, to have some sort of advisory group around the market. That can allow you innovation. It can make sure that if you have a staff person, whether volunteer or paid, they have some oversight. There's some fairness when rules are being written or protected. This, of course, is one of the graphs from the USDA Farmers Market Survey 2006, so I'm sure it's quite different now, but it's very interesting to look at this graph and realize that at that time, the majority of the markets were that were writing rules were being written by the market manager. It's not unusual. It's very normal. But I wonder how many. I would have loved to see this in relationship to how many of them had some sort of a written mission statement to make sure that that market manager, the rules they were writing, or the board or whoever, were writing them in relationship to what the goals of that market were. And then once you create a mission, I find this isn't done as often as maybe as it could be, which is to make sure that you let people know. When you are a brand new organization, it's a great way to advertise that you're out there about to build your market. I think if you're an existing market and you've redefined it, it's a wonderful way to remind people of your expanded reach. Maybe you put out a magnet or a bookmark or something like that, or another way, which I'm going to show you a couple ways where people have promoted their market mission statement. Here's two examples of mission statements. They're both pretty good. The first one is Athens, Ohio. And I think that it's a very clearly written mission statement. And from what I know of the Athens, Ohio market, I think it defines who it is pretty well. The part which is interesting to me here is the part about business opportunities. Have that directly in the mission statement. As many of you may know, one of the main partners for the Athens, Ohio market is the AceNet Business Incubator, run by Leslie Schaller and others. And they actually often feed new businesses from their incubator into the market. So I think that's very interesting that they have that written to their mission statement. I also noticed that in this mission statement, they have regional and local, 2 words. So that's really interesting. That's unusual to find that. And that may just be something that they've redeveloped more recently. But it's a little surprising to see regional and local in one. I mean, how do you define those two? If I were, is there a definition for that in Athens? Why do they have both in there? Good question. The second mission statement is a great one, but there's something missing in it, which is where it's from. It's a good idea to put the name of your municipality in your mission statement just for this reason. If it ends up somewhere, if somebody has used it or somebody sees it and they're not quite sure where that was, it's easy to remember. So although I like this mission statement, I'm a little, it's probably would have been a great idea for this market to make sure that the name of their organization was in the mission statement, because again, it'll go that mission statement may go many places, and when it's out there, it's always going to remind people of this particular market that way. I want to show you really quickly a couple of ways people put up their mission statement. This is an interesting one. I'm going to let Jen tell me when they can see my screen, the YouTube screen. Jen?
Yep.
Yeah, you can see it?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so this is the North Union Farmers Market, wonderful little YouTube, 48-second YouTube film they made about their mission. And if you can see, as I go below where my cursor is, right below here is the actual one-sentence mission statement. North Union Farmers Market champions the local foods of Northeast Ohio and promotes their environmental, economic, and health benefits by connecting certified producers with consumers through a network of markets. And what they've done in the video is to take that a little bit, separate it out a little bit more, and obviously use this gorgeous visual of an apple becoming apple to apple pie, which I think is a really great way they've done it. And then this one from Michigan, I just really, really like this, the way it's done. It's got a nice, as you see, a nice little one-sentence market history, which is very clear. And then it has the mission statement, and then how that mission statement will happen. So the market will strengthen community ties by providing a venue, blah, blah, blah. And then this interaction will promote, so what they do and how they will do it, which I think is a great way, and it's sitting on their site, which I think is really, really important. And then the Santa Monica Farmers Market, of course, one of our legendary farmers markets in the U.S. And what I like also about this one is the mission is clearly written here. It says mission. It's in bold. It's in italics. It's on the page with the recipes. It's not stuck off somewhere else, but it's on a page where they're actually looking at all their information about what's happening. So I think a lot of good information in the middle of this that I think are very well done. And it gives you a very clear idea of who they are and what they do. And I think the last thing I want to show you, so there's some good examples. The last thing I want to show you before we start taking questions is this little visual from Toronto that I love. It's from our friends at Toronto Food Share and all the other folks up there. And I think that in this world, as we get more and more visual, the ways like North Union Farmers Market and others have used their mission and their market to put it into visuals, I think is great. I think what you're looking at, if you're looking at this 25 food connections to the city of Toronto, basically this is not only a vision, but it's also what they do. But it's a great way to put it alongside of a mission statement so that people that need a visual can see that and say, I get it. Okay, I see what you're after. You're after all of these different connections. That's the goal of the organization. And it's made very clear through this visual. I think overall, how you run your market, how it's governed, it's many different ways where markets are doing this nowadays. But I think if you're very clear about your purpose and you're clear about who you serve and how you do that, and you keep on revisiting that in language that everybody can feel invited to, you're going to stay a lot more relevant and have a lot less crisis in your market, and also probably attract more stakeholders as well. All right, so I think we can start asking some questions.
Thanks, Darlene.
Great.
Sure.
I'm going to launch the next poll, which is for markets without mission statements currently. And you guys can feel free to type in your questions to the question box and answer the poll.
And Darlene, while they're doing that, I have a quick question.
Okay.
You mentioned in terms of governance how the mission statement could be used. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that rather than in marketing and promotion, how the mission statement can be focused on the governance of the market.
Well, obviously, I mean, if you're a board of directors, that's your role. I mean, your role is to manage the mission and the internal, structure of the organization. I think if you're talking about the mission statement, there's always a lot of good words in that. I think, first of all, whoever mentioned the mission statement should be part of that advisory group. So if it's farmers, if it talks about farmers, if it talks about community members, well, they should be part of that governance because that's who will make sure that they are represented in the answers that come forward. I think what we find a lot of times is that the governance of markets tends to be the original, the market community tends to be, the market governance tends to be made up of those who are at the market, either vending or working or in some ways. And I think it's a good idea with the mission especially, when you're talking about governance of that you be very expansive as much as you can be. I think that it also means that when you start talking about redefining your mission, if your governance is inclusive and includes public health and maybe maybe Main Street businesses, that sort of thing, I think it would be very, I think it makes your process much easier. As far as management of a market and how that mission works, I can tell you that in every situation when I was running markets in New Orleans, and I was not a founder, and I had to go back and figure out, and someone would say, well, why is that? Why can't I do that here? I don't understand. Why? Can you explain why I'm not allowed, or can I do that? And I could go back to the mission and the rules that were written from that mission and explain why. So I think it's extremely important that the market management has some sort of organizing statement that helps them figure out their rules, and that is the rules should come from the mission statement. I hope I answered. I'm not sure I did, but.
Mm-hmm. And as a small, sort of just starting market, you had mentioned that it was important not to be too broad and not to be too specific in your mission statement.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you are a market of just 2 or 3 vendors just getting started, and you do have a very specific focus? Are you limiting the growth of your market by making your mission statement specific to what you're doing at the moment, or should it grow as the market grows?
It's a very good question, because you're right. What happens with a lot of new markets, small markets, is they really want to protect those anchors and early adopters that came to them first, and that's very important. It's very important to honor that. But don't write your mission statement based on the likes and dislikes of those people who are in the room necessarily. Right. I think that way, if you're a new market, you're a small market, and you're writing your mission statement, it shouldn't make any difference whether or not you're small or large as far as how you go at writing your mission statement, which is, look, what are the cultural assets in your community that you're working to expand or protect? What needs are you focused on, addressing? And it should be about the community at large. That's who you serve, and including the farming base. I think what we're, often you'll hear this in markets, small markets. They will have a lot about the farming community and the farmers' needs, which I think it's really important that farming, I think, is some form of that is in the mission statement of farmers markets that are producer only. I think it'll help them a lot in the long run. But I also feel like it's, the triple bottom line that FMC so clearly advocates for, I think, is kind of the best way to describe what a balanced mission statement is, whether you're small or large. Who do you serve today, and who out in the community would be drawn to that? So yeah, don't just write a way to protect those in the room, although, you certainly can make sure that can be done through other rules. I think the mission should be somewhat exciting and have language in it that's somewhat expansive. It just doesn't, but what you do should be clearly defined. You could use words that allow people to realize that, you're inviting others in, but you're just not saying we're going to do all that. We run a market to make sure that there's an open public space for farmers and shoppers and neighbors to come together. That's pretty expansive, and it shouldn't require you to be large or small to do that.
And you had mentioned earlier a worksheet that Market Umbrella had put together.
Yeah, it's the forum. It's on. Yeah, I think they've actually created their. I think Fruition is live and is live now. So the 4M concept of looking at someone's mission, management, marketing, and measurement of every project is one that we worked very hard on in the early days of Market Share. And every one of our share documents that are still on Market Umbrella's Market Share page, I think still have the 4M worksheet at the end of each of them, so that you can look at that particular issue and then realize and work at how it works for you. I think since then, they've actually finished the tool that I think now is called Fruition. And what it does is kind of do that in a more interactive way. You can actually write out information throughout your project list time, and it actually helps you make sure you're staying within your mission and your management structure. So it's called their 4Ms or their Fruition documents. Let me say one more thing too. Is I know there's people often will confuse vision and mission, and there's values. There's vision, there's values, there's mission, and there's a lot of this other important stuff out there for you to learn about. I mean, you know, the vision is the big idea, is the big you know, what you hope to achieve long term. What's the goal? What's the big idea you have, or your theory of change, if you will. And then you get into practical language with mission. Don't get caught up in wordsmithing. Don't get caught up in fighting. It happens all the time. You fight over a word for weeks and weeks because someone likes, someone doesn't. If it's contentious, take it out. If it's not exactly what you want, then you can start over. You don't have to. You're basically just trying to be as transparent as you can to be sure of your community, and realize that there are 96% of the American public out there that haven't really gone to farmers markets, who wonder, well, why can't they just go to the grocery store and buy farmers goods there? I don't understand. What is the difference between that and that? And you're trying to also make sure that people that are in the community around the market feel like it's a place to use their resources to make change. So think about it from an organizing standpoint and a consumer standpoint, and both of those can be addressed in your mission statement.
Do we have any questions from attendees? They're coming through. We did get some sample mission statements from our registration polls. Darlene, would you be interested in talking about any of those?
Yeah, I don't have them in front of me, but I think that the ones that I saw, I think there are a couple of things. And that one thing I would say is there is, you know, when you're an organization that runs markets, at first sometimes these organizations, that's what they did. They had a market, even though they had a pretty lofty organizational mission statement. They never really defined the market itself. I mean, it's funny, my own organization in New Orleans, Market Umbrella, that I worked at so long, we had pretty fancy mission statement and redefined that mission statement at least once, but we really never had a mission statement for the market itself. We had a mission for the organization that was to initiate and promote the ecology of local economies. And what was funny about that was we would get calls asking us about empty buildings, and we wanted those empty buildings to put in a 7-day-a-week market. And we would hang up the phone and look at each other and go, oh, why are people calling us about that? And then finally one day we were like, well, wait a minute, the mission of our organization is not clear, that we wouldn't be interested in that. Why wouldn't you call us if you saw something about local economies that had nothing to do with food, had nothing to do with markets? And so as the organization grew and changed its governance in 2008, we created a new mission statement, which was to cultivate, I can't remember what it is now, the public good of public markets, and yet that still didn't talk about the Crescent City Farmers Markets, and so I think they actually have a mission statement around the, I'm sure they do, but it's still not something they use very clearly. I don't think I don't always, I think for the market community, if you have an organization much like that, that is expanding into other food system work or into other market work, and you have a weekly market or tri-weekly market or what have you, I think it's a good idea for the market itself to have a mission statement. The ones I saw on the worksheet that came in before the webinar looked good to me, but I noticed that some of them were, of course, organizational mission statements, and some of them weren't running markets, and some of them had, it's a little different, and so I think it's very important, especially for the markets themselves. Not everybody needs one, but I think it helps even the staff to know how the market fits into the larger organization, and if the market needs a mission statement of its own, which I think it normally does, I think that would be a good idea for the market community to think about, even when the organization has a very good one.
Great.
Okay.
Well, we don't have any other questions, so.
Okay. So clear, no questions are needed. All right, and we'll put out a PDF and and I'll put out the PowerPoint, and we'll put together a PDF too of good links for people to use as well.
Okay, we did just get one quick question in before you leave.
Mm-hmm.
One second. Okay, the question says, I'm not a nonprofit. My advisory board is the developer from the properties I lease my space from. They have say in who comes in and who does not. All regional and local farms come in without question if the farm has been approved. So how do you include that in your mission statement, or is that something that needs to be included if there is some regulation on which farms are able to enter?
Well, it's interesting that they said all of them would be included. I wonder if that in the best case scenario, if that were true, I mean, not that there are hundreds, but if there were hundreds, or if I was a local, does it mean producer only? It says all local and regional farms. Well, I'm a farmer, but I have some goods I resell. Am I allowed to bring both of those? I mean, you don't use the mission to take out who doesn't belong there, but yeah, I do think that exactly, even if you're a nonprofit, having a statement of purpose. Why does this marketplace exist? Who does it serve? We believe in, including local and regional produce or farmers or local businesses within our developments. However that is, I do think, because I think partly, as we know, farmers across the country